but you've got one man alone, Dr. Shiva, up in Massachusetts. Dr. Shiva, tell us about, you're in federal court. You're winning against the oligarchs. They're in absolute shock. You're not a lawyer, are you, sir?
No, I'm not, Steve, but I'm learning enough. And what was interesting was on May 20th and 21st, which we had nearly 16 hours of hearings. It was me against three of the leading lawyers from Wilmer and Hale at Twitter, three of the lawyers from the government of Massachusetts, and one lawyer from the National Association of State Election Directors. Our case, Steve, is fundamentally about that the government, this is very critical, very different than the DeSantis bill, and there's some weaknesses there, but what we've shown is that the government and Twitter work together to suppress political speech. And what happened, Steve, was the judge on October 30th, he gave us a big victory because in testimony we showed that the government has a trusted Twitter partnership, a special portal that they can report on U.S. citizens when they expose violation of law by government officials. So that came out in testimony. No news media picked up on that, Steve, except you. So on October 30th, in testimony, a federal judge and I exposed in cross-examination that the government has a special trusted Twitter partnership to call the Twitter and tell them what to do. So there's a big illusion here that Twitter is some massive corporation that does stuff on their own. What we've shown is that the government tells Twitter what to do. So that was on October 30th, and that's when I was thrown off while I was running for political office. Let's just remember that political speech is the most protected aspect of the First Amendment, and they violated that. And they admitted that in testimony. So that was on October 30th. And the judge gave me all the terms of the preliminary injunction, which was to tell the government, stop calling Twitter. If you have any issues, you will go on Twitter and rebut him. Then, after I was put on Twitter on November 4th, Steve, I kept tweeting away. On February 1st, I had a video lecture where I displayed again the same 4 email screenshots that got me thrown off on October 30th, which exposed courtroom-proof evidence that the government had violated federal law when they deleted ballot images. That's why I got thrown off on the 30th. And on February 1st, right when I shared that same thing, I got thrown off again. So I went back into federal court on February 4th with another injunction. The judge responded back and he said, before I can give you complete relief, I also want you to bring Twitter. What's unique about our case, Steve, we didn't go after Twitter. We went after the government, state. And what we showed was that there was state action involved. So on May 20th and 21st, the judge he brought everyone in, Twitter, myself, the government, and the National Association of State Election Directors, which was also the vehicle they used. The night before the hearing, Steve, what I was trying to figure out is, what is this trusted Twitter partnership? There's nothing written about it. And lo and behold, Steve, I got very lucky, and I found this playbook called the Election Influence Operations Playbook. Here they are. And where did I find this? I found this on a server because I'd seen an email interaction between the head of Twitter in London talking about that they had built a trusted Twitter partnership, the Partner Support Portal. Very anodyne term, banal term, PSP, that was deployed in England so the parliamentary security forces could use that portal to report on citizens. Then it was deployed in India. Then it was deployed in Taiwan and brought here on September 20th, or in the fall, April 20th. The architects of this document, Steve, are all the defendants. Twitter Legal's on it, the government of Massachusetts state election director, and this woman, Amy Cohen of NASID. So when I brought this up, the judge said, I want you to submit that as evidence. That was on the 20th. On the 21st, the judge comes in. He had stayed awake in the early morning reading it, and he started off the 21st hearing, and he said, this case will more than likely be taught in every law school as an exemplar on constitutional law. Then the judge said, you brought this far, and he goes, I want it also, are you open to also having a constitutional lawyer help you? So he's appointed a constitutional lawyer, unprecedented, and the court will fund expenses of it, Steve. So where I am right now is that everyone has talked, this thing about Twitter acts as its own. What our case has shown, and it's history making, is because we've shown that we have lost all political speech in this country, because this manual is a standard operating procedure manual of how the state can suppress the speech of American citizens, particularly political speech. Steve, in this document, it's like out of the CIA. They brand you as an influence operator. Step one. Once they brand you as an influence operator, they have severity levels, and then they have action steps and how they monitor you. So I was branded. It's step-by-step manual, Steve, how to suppress a speech politically of those who dissent against the government. In particular, Steve, there is a bullet in there which says one feature of an influence operator, get this, is someone who exposes corruption of a state election official, which is exactly what I was doing, Steve. So I was targeted.
Wow.
It's freaking amazing, man. So this is beyond...
Dr. Shiva,
yeah.
Dr. Shiva, how can people follow you? Give us your Twitter. How do people assist you? This audience wants to know how they can help, what they have to do. Give us your contact.